Stu.
Yes, Mac.
So, on the way to the theater this week, as we went and saw the Fall Guys screening, I thought to myself, I was a bit of an adventure junkie back in the day. I did a little skateboarding, a little rollerblading, a little BMX, and a little bit of everything. Can't say I was great at any of it, but I tried it all. I thought to myself, man, is there any like conceivable way I could do a stunt for a movie? Like, is there a stunt that they do on a consistent basis that I could do believably on screen? And I don't know if there is. I don't. It would have to be. I think I would be okay with falling, but anything athletic, I obviously wouldn't be able to do. I wouldn't be able to do some fucking parkour shit. But that was the first thing I said to you. What type of stunt would you be able to do? Maybe.
So I think that I could do something jackass related, like
Okay.
something that's kind of clumsy. I could kind of hurt myself, but if it involves driving a car, if it involves doing something very
Ooh, I
coordinated,
might be able to.
I don't think I could do that.
That's a good point. I might be able to roll a car. I have the utmost faith of myself behind the wheel. I think I'm a pretty good wheelman. I think I might be able to roll a car and be all right and not panic. Do you think you could do the whole getting set on fire type of thing?
I was just gonna say, speaking from my college days, or at least my visiting college days, I have been set on fire in the past. I have been tased in the past. I feel like something like that
Yeah.
would be right up my alley.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing to think about because people have different phobias. And also, like, even if I wanted to try certain things, I just baseline wouldn't have the athleticism to do certain things.
Mhm.
So it's an interesting thing to think about. That's for sure.
I would say that there is one stunt in this movie that our hero keeps on doing where he is lit on fire and then pulled with a harness back into a rock. Sign me up for that.
Yeah, I don't I would like maybe it's because it's what I do in the real world. I don't think being on fire is something I'd like. It's not something I want to sign up for.
One goo, three, yeah! Goo! Jaws 3! Goo! King of Queens! Goo! Meryl Streep! Goo! Entertainment!
I'm Goo.
And I'm Mick.
And we are the Mac and Goo program. We bring you friendship.
Yes. Yes, we do. And I'll tell you, there's a very, very fun friendship in this movie that we're talking about today. And that's what this movie is in general today. It's
Fun.
fun the movie.
Yep. Let's turn our brains off and just have some fun. Let's
Yeah.
not think too hard, but let's just have some fun.
Now, I am perfectly good with what we got on screen,
Yes.
but I must ask off the rip here, and we can talk about this in a few minutes, expound upon it in a few minutes. Your level of excitement for this movie was much higher than mine
Yes, it
was.
was.
So,
Yeah.
are you coming away disappointed at all with what we got?
I think it hit right where I wanted.
Okay. All right. That's good to hear. That's good to hear. I wasn't sure because to me, it looked like your perfect action comedy popcorn movie, and I feel like that's what we got.
I think it is the perfect turn your brain off, lowest common denominator, summer blockbuster that can appeal to the widest masses possible.
Mhm.
That's what we got. And I think that is exactly what you want to do every once in a while with the PG-13 movie is just make it as simple as possible. Even though this one, maybe too many twists.
So I guess maybe your excitement level was you needed this more than I do. You were yearning for this movie more than
I
I do.
needed this movie.
It's my money and I need it now. Which, by the way, I know you haven't finished the latest season of Curb, but they worked the JG Wentworth
Oh.
877 cash now into it, and
Okay,
it's
now I'll
fucking
watch it.
perfect.
Now I'll watch it.
Folks, today we are discussing The Fall Guy. The Fall Guy is a PG-13 action comedy and drama with a runtime of 126 minutes, and I think it could have been 20 minutes less.
Or they could have found something else to do for those 20 minutes.
That might be true as well. It feels a little long. I
There
will
is
admit
a
that.
bit of a pacing issue.
Mhm.
Middle of the second act?
There was 2 times I actually felt like the
Yeah.
movie kinda came to a screeching halt. So there's definitely a pacing issue.
Yeah.
Go on Roddy T's right now. We don't have an audience score. We're recording before the audience score is released. The critic score is 86%, which feels about right. And on Metacritic, a 76, which honestly feels a little high.
May I guess the audience score?
Yeah, please do.
So I'm gonna put the over/under at 89.5, and I'm gonna
Ooh.
take the over.
All right, so you're expecting it to be in the 90s.
Yes.
That feels right around. It's a good over under. It feels like it would be like a 90, 91, 92, maybe an 88. You're right in the range there, so that's a good over under there. I'm gonna sit on the fence and
You.
not venture a
I'm gonna
guess.
push. I'm gonna push.
Goo, this movie is written by Drew Pierce. We would know him from Iron Man 3, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, and Hobbs and Shaw. So that's an interesting three most popular movies he's known for.
Sequels.
Um, I would say the writing was actually the writing was a little bit of an issue in this movie. There's some really meta dialogue, and then there's some really odd dialogue. I had a little bit of an issue with the writing, so I
That, and then I think the plot is
the
just
overarching story, yeah,
is
which
a
ties
it's
into
a
this.
little much at points, and then also, what reality are we in?
Yeah, that's a good question to ask too, because seemingly we're kind of based in reality, but then not
No,
so
we're not.
much. Yeah,
Stunt
yeah.
men are superheroes. But let me also say this right now. I know that we're poking and we're prodding at this. I had a very good time.
Oh, I had a blast. I
Yes,
laughed
I had a
throughout.
great time. I
I
highly recommend this
I
movie.
really enjoy. We're just talking about here now, you know, what prevents this movie from being like an all-timer or something we're gonna
Yes.
run out and tell people to go see is the stuff we're
I'm only gonna
criticizing now.
walk out and tell people to see it. I'm not running. I'm not sprinting.
Just a whisper, hey, you should see that
Hey,
as they
Fall
go by.
Guy? They're like, "Oh, the 1980s TV show?" Yes.
Yeah, sure, kind of like that. Which I had never heard of the TV show until like 3 months ago, by the way.
Now you have.
Good. This movie is directed by David Leitch, who is known for Atomic Blonde. He also, first and foremost, he was like an uncredited director, stunt director on the John Wick movies,
Yes.
first two, I think. And then he did Atomic Blonde, Deadpool 2, Hobbs and Shaw, and Bullet Train. You and I both agree, Bullet Train, one of the more underrated movies from 2022.
Yeah, and if I'm, put a gun to my head right now, I'm gonna take this over Bullet Train, but it's similar in there's a lot of stuff that I like, close to love, and then
Mhm.
there's some stuff that I'm like, "Well, we could have done without this."
I might lean Bullet Train over this. It's
Oh,
close.
okay.
It's close. Bullet Train was a little more exciting, if that makes sense. A little more of a like drama going on in Bullet Train.
Bullet
Um,
Train for
it's
most of
close.
the
I
movie
might lean this actually.
felt more like real life, question mark? Like, it felt like there were more stakes in it.
Better pacing, number one, because it was on a train and the train was going fast, but also the plot dictated it. And it
Because
just
the
felt
train no. Stick with what you just said. Because of the train, it was better paced.
uh yeah, it's so those five movies, Atomic Blonde, Deadpool 2, Hobbs and Shaw, Bullet Train, and now this. I would have this probably I haven't seen Hobbs and Shaw, admittedly. I probably never will.
I'm never gonna see Hobbs and Shaw.
I would probably have this second or third. Better than Atomic Blonde, but not as
Yes.
good as Deadpool 2.
I think I'm right there with you. Deadpool 2, this, Bullet Train, Atomic Blonde.
Yeah. All right, so agree to agree.
Okay. Also,
Upcoming
he's a former stuntman.
yeah, which is cool, and obviously, um, this whole thing is sort of we saw it a little bit at the Oscars this year, them talking about stunts and stunt men and women trying to
Yeah.
get their due, maybe get an award eventually, but this is sort of playing out, and I think beats a dead horse a little bit in this movie a couple times with the stunt man stuff.
Well, it does get into him, like I said earlier, because it's a little cartoonish. The stunt people are all able to do these crazy acrobatics and fight crime and kind of defy gravity and the laws of nature.
Mm. It's again, what type of world are we playing in here? It's
Yes.
a good point you made at the top. Goo, if you are a David Leitch fan, what he's got upcoming is a TV miniseries called Hot Air, which is a
About
series
balloons?
based on Richard Branson, the billionaire, and he's going to be played by Andrew Garfield. So I'm
Did
pretty
you
intrigued
know?
by that. And then
Did you
something.
know
Mhm.
that, and I did not fact check this, but I heard Andy Hart talk about this on WEEI,
Okay.
that if a hot air balloon lands in your yard, you have to offer them wine and bread.
Yeah, that's surely not true.
Well, we'll never know.
I'll tell you what, speaking of stunts at the beginning, One of the least things I'd like to do in my whole life, stunt or stunt not related, is riding a hot air balloon. I wouldn't enjoy that at all.
I guess you'd have, like, no control over where the balloon is going, and I've
There's
heard of
power
mishaps
lines.
of power lines.
I would
I'll tell you
rather
a story off the air. I don't wanna talk about it on, but
I would rather jump out of an airplane than ride in a hot air balloon.
do you have a parachute?
Yeah, and they would jump out of the
Oh,
plane. You
okay.
don't have one in the hot air balloon, and it's just this big fucking wicker basket that someone probably fucking. How do you make wicker? You know, do you
Bunch of
stitch it?
leftover
So,
picnic baskets.
yeah, someone's fucking grandma's furniture got turned into the basket that I'm now 3,000 feet in the air with. That no, thank you on the hot air balloon
I
shit.
currently live in a house that my grandparents used to live in,
Mm.
and at one point of the attic, there is just so much wicker, and I'm like, "Why what why was wicker so used?"
I think every household in the 80s and 90s had one of those big circular wicker chairs where the circle moved. It sat in the pod, the circle
Mhm.
moved, and then there was a pad on top of the circle. And those were tremendously uncomfortable. I don't know when wicker came from, where wicker came from. I don't know why wicker. I know nothing about wicker.
As a podcast, let's put our foot down.
Yeah.
We're gonna stamp this. Wicker sucks.
Yeah. Wicker blows.
Yeah.
Goose, synopsis of a fall guy. The Fall Guy.
The Fall Guy, not a Fall Guy. This is
I was
the Fall Guy.
confused by the first word coming up here. A down and out stuntman must find the missing star of his ex girlfriend's blockbuster film.
Yeah,
Kind of
that's it.
undersells it. Kind
Yeah.
of undersells it, but good enough.
That's pretty much it, though.
This movie stars Ryan Gosling as Colt Profesh Sievers. He's so cool.
Formerly Dangers,
Yeah,
or
right.
Danger was his middle name.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question, and this hit me midway through the podcast, not through the podcast, through the
Mhm.
movie, and I did no research after. Maybe you can help me out. How attractive are normal stunt people?
It's a good question. I was thinking about it. For you, baseline, you got to be probably pretty physically fit. So
Mhm.
that, like a baseline, they're probably somewhat attractive. But you would have to think your face takes a beating too. You know, you probably have some scars and shit like that. So then it brings you back down a little bit.
'Cause no one in this movie looks at Ryan Gosling and says, "Wait a second, why isn't your face on the
Yeah,
camera?
why aren't you the
You
movie star?
handsome son of a bitch." Because then we also get into, like, he is a fucking cool character in this movie.
Yes. Yeah.
He is a cool cat. And then you think back to another one of our favorite characters, another cool cat, Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, also a stuntman.
Yeah. Let's get to that conversation in 1 minute. Let me run through the rest of the stars because I think it's a pretty good point to make about Gosling here.
Bring up a Facebook of stuntmen's profiles, please.
Emily Blunt, the co-star here, plays Jodie Moreno, the ex-girlfriend in question. She was
She's
very
good.
good.
Yeah.
Aaron Taylor Johnson is Tom Ryder. If you had to name a Plemonade type of person in this movie, he might be it. He was very, very
Maybe.
good.
He was very, he felt like he was from Tropic Thunder.
I agree. But he did the best out of those characters, I
Okay.
felt like. Hannah Waddingham, we know her from Ted Lasso. She's the tall Brit who's very
More like
attractive
Hannah
in her old age.
Wiggingham, because she's got a big old wig on, I think.
She plays Gail Meyer, who was pretty funny for most of her
Mhm.
screen time. Teresa Palmer is Iggy Starr, who's not in this all that much. She plays Aaron Taylor Johnson's girlfriend. Stephanie Hsu pops up for a few minutes here as Alma Milan, and Winston Duke in here as Dan Tucker.
Oh, I now wanna add another segment to our I don't know what it becomes with 10. A decagon? A decagon now.
Look at
Uh,
you,
okay, so what
math
I would
guy.
like to, to add to everything else now, we're gonna do if the shoe fits.
Okay, please explain.
Well, whenever she pops up, you're like, "She fits right in."
All right, so it's just a Stephanie Hsu based thing.
Yeah, like, no, it's no one who steals the show.
Mm-hmm.
They just slide right in, do their job, and get off screen.
Listen, I discovered her in Everything Everywhere All at Once. I fell in love with her on that. What's that one that you liked a little more than me?
To all the boys I've kissed.
No. The one with the 4 friends came out last year. Comedy. I like No Hard
Oh,
Feelings more. You liked this one more.
it's the show Friends -2. That's what it's called.
All right, Friends -2. She was great in that.
Yeah.
We see her bare back button balls in that. So I was a big fan of
I
that.
think that's a stunt double.
It might be a body
Oh,
double.
that's what you could do for a stunt double. You could be
Body
someone
be a body double. Goo, Ryan
They
Gosling.
figured it out.
I said this to you. This was my first thought after the movie was over. I said, if Brad Pitt didn't exist, I think Ryan Gosling would be the coolest guy on the planet. I think you can still make an argument for Ryan Gosling, but Brad Pitt is definitely the coolest guy on the planet.
I think that if you don't have Ryan Gosling in this movie, I don't think anyone else could pull this off.
So
Because
that's the secondary point here. Yeah.
there is a certain, like, not only
Je ne
look,
sais quoi.
it's the
Je
attitude,
ne
it's
sais
the
quoi.
line delivery. Like, there's a bunch of handsome actors in Hollywood, but je ne sais quoi with this guy.
I think maybe Taron Egerton might be able to do it. Maybe.
Because you need to have the quick one-liners, but
Mhm.
they can't come off as phony. So, like, a Ryan Reynolds really couldn't do this.
Yeah. And you also can't be like big over the top large like The Rock
Yes.
is. You have to be like pretty standard body size.
'Cause he's also, and much like in The Nice Guys, he does such a great job of going from quiet to loud,
Yeah.
and it isn't something that is, like, consistent. It's just, like, out of nowhere, boom.
You know what's a really underrated quality, especially in actors that are in a lot of action movies? Being able to be beat up believably. He does
Yeah.
it great in The Other Guys. He does it great here. Like being able to take your lumps or a bump, as they call it in the wrestling world, and making it believable goes a long way. Like really sells an action scene, and the Goss is really good at it. Like I
Mhm.
said, Emily Blunt was good. Aaron Taylor Johnson was phenomenal in his more limited role. Um, I'm still holding out hope on Craven just because of Aaron Taylor Johnson, but fuck, that thing is
Oh, you
doomed.
mentioned, Winston Duke. I keep in my head referring to him as either Zach Duke or Clark Duke, and that's not his name.
Zach Duke, former lefty of the Pirates, Diamondbacks, and maybe 5 other major league teams. Clark Duke is
Plop.
Plop from The
Clark
Office.
Duke, his light burned real bright. Everyone thought that he was the next guy, and then I wouldn't mind a Clark Duke-a-sance.
Hot Tub Time Machine is very underrated.
Yeah, he's great in that. He is, like, when he was on the screen in Superbad, you were just drawn to him.
Goo, this is a comedy action drama, but also it's a bit of a rom-com as well. Gives you
Yes.
enough to sort of establish it as a rom-com, and actually the love story in here is pretty decent. It's developed just enough.
Before we get into our Decagon, I
Mhm.
will say this, and my wife still has no idea how to rate movies. She
Yeah.
gave this a 12 out of 10. She loved it.
Yeah, for the comedy and love story, I'm assuming.
Comedy, love story, look, like we said earlier, there are things that you could definitely poke at, but it's a complete movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it's to me a little spoiler alert. We'll get to hot dogs in a few. To me, it's like clearly the second best movie of the year that I've seen. Now, I've only seen 14,
I've only seen 2 movies.
but it's not even remotely in the same stratosphere as Dune 2, but
Mhm.
it's head and shoulders above pretty much everything else I've watched. So it's a pretty fun movie. And like I said, the only real drawbacks I have from this movie is that uh there's a couple of lulls, and then right around the middle of the movie you're pretty much exactly sure how it's going to play out. It's
And then
very
also,
predictable.
so how many times in a movie can they wink and nod at us enough that we're like, "I guess we'll excuse this?"
Yeah, right. Yeah, a couple fourth wall
Like,
breaks
just
kind of.
because you call out something for being overly
Yeah.
complicated, which I feel like every movie does now, I don't know if we can excuse it anymore.
That the whole scene with the split screen was a real wild ride for me, because I was like, I kind of like it, and then I kind of did it, and then it kind of brought me back. It was, and that scene went on for too long as well, which
Yes.
happens a couple times in here. But this movie's enjoyable. If it's worth the price of admission.
All right, before we get to the Decagon here, carnitas, white rice, refried beans, pico de gallo, and the hottest sauce they had.
Yeah, Goo ate another fucking burrito.
I did.
It's unbelievable. I
I
will
was
say,
gonna eat it. I was gonna eat it ahead of time, but
mhm.
the line at El Jefe's was ridiculous. There was a guy in front of me that when he was ordering his burrito, you know what he said to the guy behind the counter? He said, "What meat do you recommend?"
Oh God, you got to
What are
go in
we
there with a.
doing?
You can't be asking the assembly line people to make recommendations. You got to go in there with a
No,
plan.
you go in there, you look at the meat, you look at which one is the best. Like, never go in there being like, "I'm definitely getting chicken." No, look at the chicken first. If it does not look up to par, pick something else. I love pork. I love carnitas. But what I always do, I look at it. If it's too wet, I don't want it.
It's a good game plan. The whole thing, whether I agree with your game plan or not, go in there with a game plan. Don't go in there with a bevy of questions.
Yeah. Also, how do you feel about people ordering more than one meal at once, like ordering for other people?
I'm okay with that, but don't keep stepping back. Do it kind of all
Do
at
it all at
once.
once.
Yeah,
Don't like go over here and then come back
yeah,
like a
yeah,
fucking
yeah.
typewriter.
Agree. But that also, you got to have a good employer on the behind the counter to make it work, though. Too. It's a give
Yeah.
and take.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get into the now decagon, and we're just going to keep on adding fucking legs out of this octopus. We're going to fun factor first, and look, this is fun. That's the
Fun.
biggest compliment. That's my one word that you can put on the DVD.
Mm-hmm.
Fun.
Yeah, this is fun factor of the movie. Like I said at the top, fun the movie. This movie sets out to make the audience laugh and enjoy themselves, and it does exactly that.
Satisfactor. I do believe this movie takes way too long to get there, but I was satisfied.
Yeah, I think at this point in my life, seeing Ryan Gosling have fun on screen, chopping it up is baseline satisfactory to me. So pretty decent satisfactor here.
And I'll also say this, like we mentioned, and this is kind of a spoiler when you mentioned that there are twists. There's a lot of twists here. But I think a compliment that you can pay this movie is that even with all the twists, you didn't lose my attention. Much like I mentioned earlier with Argyle, once they had those twists at the end of the second act, I'm like, this thing kind of sucks. And I don't care anymore.
Can I ask you a question here? I mean, you don't have
Yes.
to answer it. It's putting you on the spot.
I'm going to answer it regardless of what you say.
Gosling or Reynolds?
Gosling.
Yeah, I think pretty comfortably for me.
Especially when we're talking silly Goss.
More range for Goss, right? Because Ryan Reynolds is always silly. Goss gives us some other stuff too.
Yeah.
I don't know if
I'm a
Reynolds
big
really
silly
does.
Goss guy. I'm a big
Yeah,
silly
I
Goss
agree.
guy.
I agree.
Oh, is it my turn?
I-
Borometer. Yeah, it definitely limps at points.
Yeah, faux show. There's some couple moments in here where I was like, all right. At the top, I said maybe they could have chopped off 20 minutes. That's probably being too harsh. But a good 8 to 10 minutes here we could have chopped off, and this would have been better.
Halloween. Will this wane over time? And it kind of has since leaving the theater because we had to take notes and really think about it. That's where the movie might have some problems. Also, when you have a movie that there's a lot of twists, the plot is kind of convoluted, it does make you think a little too much. And you're like, I'm going to knock a little bit more off this. Also, I'm sorry to steal your thunder, but I am looking at your notes.
Mhm.
But you mentioned how this isn't funny enough to be referenced. I do like the reoccurring joke of, and we're going to kick the shit out of him. That was a
good.
nice little joke.
That was good in the towards the end of the movie there. But I, as a straightforward comedy, probably the best of the year so far. But if you're talking like comedies where it becomes relevant in your everyday life, when you're referencing, we're having a conversation similar to this earlier, where all like the properties you reference all the time. This doesn't have anything like that in there. And that means I don't think it's going to be talked about a lot. I'm not going to talk about it a lot, so I'm not going to come back to it too much. It's just it's good humor. It's mostly Gosling sort of reacting to stuff in a room, which is funny. It's just not stuff I'm going to come back to.
I'm not comparing it to this movie, but I also kind of am comparing it to this movie. This kind of reminds me of in the summer of 2022, where you just recommend Top Gun to everybody because you just assume everyone's going to like it. This is a
Yep.
movie I think everyone's going to like, and I'm going to recommend to people.
Fair enough. That's fair. Baseline, it might be very likable for a lot of people.
Max Credit Union, who are you giving credit to?
We've talked about it a couple times already, but I think there's maybe 3 or 4 other actors that could maybe 3 or 4 other actors that could pull off what Gosling does in this movie and really sells this movie. It's just there's not a lot of actors that have this range as a comedic actor, dramatic actor, rom-com type of stuff, and do all the action stuff that's pulled off in this movie. It's few and far between.
When life gives you plemons, you make plemonade. And in this movie, I feel that Gosling, every scene that he's in, and he's in the entire movie, just his likability, his nonchalant way about his comedy,
Mm.
it's there.
Yep, totally agreed. Because I just gave him so much credit already, I'm gonna go a little bit of a swerve here, Goo, for Plemonade. There's a couple people making Plemonade, or at least starting to make Plemonade in this movie. Like I said, Stephanie Shu, she's only on the screen for like 4 minutes. She's pretty good. She never really got a chance to fully make her Plemonade. You know who did make Plemonade though was
Who made Lemonade?
that goddamn puppy dog, Jean Claude.
That was
Jean
good.
Claude stole the show in this movie. I thought it was the instant reaction the first 15 seconds when they introduced the dog. I was like, this is a little much. And then the minute the dog got involved with the chase, I was like, you know what? I'm all in. And the cool part about this Goo is the it's the character is sort of a nod to Eva Mendes's dog that has passed, who only responded like in French. It was a French dog, so it was like a nod to his wife now, which is pretty cool. But the dog made me laugh out loud like 4 or 5 times.
Pants Tent City, Excite Bike Mania. What got you going in this movie? And I actually did let out a pretty loud chuckle during a boat scene in this movie.
Yeah, I had a couple real hearty laughs. But I think my favorite scene was towards the end of the movie when Winston Duke basically assembles the stunt team of Avengers.
Barkeep?
And it's that sort of thing, but it's also a little bit of a Wakanda sort of thing going on. They undoubtedly was like a wink and nod at the Avengers in
What if
Black
he
Panther,
assembled a team of Dukes?
like Franz Ferdinand.
Yeah. All right, for those of you tardy to the Mac and Goo party, we rate everything on a 40 hot dog rating system. And Mac, like I mentioned, I think you can nitpick this movie to death. It's a little overly explainy, Bondish, if you will.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's inside baseball, too. There's a lot of Hollywood stuff that maybe some people might get turned off by. I did not like the soundtrack here. They used Kiss's I Was Made for Loving You at least 7 times. I didn't need it more than once. Also, even the other songs used, it was just like a generic jock rock album that I didn't really care for.
I'll tell you what, I think that's exactly what the movie called for. I get
think
what
there
you're
was no
saying.
creativity to it.
I think that's exactly what the movie called for. And you are right, though. This little bit of inside baseball, Hollywood stuff. I also think that's why the critics have liked it so much, because it's
Yeah,
poking
that always,
fun at that.
yeah, because this world is just so cartoony where people are able to live through certain things that maybe they wouldn't, or get hurt with certain things that maybe they wouldn't. And it felt Tropic Thundery, but not as sharp as Tropic Thunder. Tropic
Yep.
Thunder, with its jokes, were a little more out there, taking some more chances. And I would say Tropic Thunder is hilarious, where this is funny.
Yeah, and that's a fine line too, because when you're shooting for
Yeah.
Tropic Thunder type of meta humor,
Mhm.
if you miss, it can go south real quick.
And like we've said, with meta humor, there's a lot of it these days. And if things are so overly complicated, but the actor tells us that it's overly complicated, do we ignore the overly complicated
Right,
stuff
right.
because
No,
they
it's a good
winked
point.
at us, because they
Yeah.
acknowledged us, and now we're friends? I love silly Gosana-sans. I'm in on this all the way. That's what really brings this up for me. The charisma is undeniable. And also, I think no one else can really do what he does. This is a great date movie. This is a lowest common denominator movie. This is a mass appeal movie that I think will hit with everyone. This will be the #1 movie at the box office. I think it'll do well for an entire month. It pays homage to stuntmen. It also, lots of really good stunts in this movie, too. So give it credit with that for doing that as well. Mac, I have this at 33 hot dogs.
Very fair rating, Goo. I must say, I am starting to question if you know what the word Renaissance means.
I'm not going to look it up.
Goo!
Yeah.
Laughs all throughout this movie here. Plenty of them. Couple of really great ones, too, in there. Like I said, there are a couple lulls, though, and it does really lean on the Gosling and Blunt stuff during those lulls. So if that doesn't hit all that well for you, maybe you'll like this movie less. The pacing's a little awkward. It's pretty predictable. So I can see people not loving this movie, but to your point, the baseline I think is very much in there. So maybe it'll be 95 on Rotten Tomatoes. Who knows?
We are in
Uh,
the like Renaissance right now.
Gosling, Blunt, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Hannah Waddingham, they do a great job. They keep you laughing. There was also a couple small jokes and small character details here that they didn't really push towards the front, but made me laugh out loud a couple of times. It really tickled me. They did a good job with that. Again, I didn't have massive expectations going in, and this gave me exactly what I wanted. I wasn't expecting a 40 dog movie. I was expecting a fun popcorn movie. It's exactly what I got. It's a
Perfect. Yep.
very good comedy, fun action. Definitely lacked in that dramatic edge that maybe would have taken it up a notch, but I got it at 34 hot dogs, my number 2 movie of the year. Again, I've seen 14 so far, and honestly, I think 8 of the 14 I've seen I have not liked. So,
Shall we get to spoilers?
spoilers.
The amount of manpower that goes into this scheme,
Mm.
it's a lot.
Yeah, it's and it seemed like it was a quick turnaround. They probably only had like 2 hours to plan it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they got
Like
130 stunt
even
team.
starting, like not even that, but like the stunt people or the people that are helping out Aaron Taylor Johnson, the person that is scanning the face when he first gets in there, she's a part of the plan.
Yeah.
Everybody there is a part of the plan, and there's a lot of people involved. You also ask like you understand why Waddingham wanted him to go into there to have his, face shown or everything like that. But if they already have the footage of ATJ doing this for them to then put the face on it, what is the point of them getting the phone from the girlfriend? Why not just go in there and take the phone in general? That's all they needed.
Well, they had to frame him, number 1. But
Yes.
here's a real thing where it started to unravel for me for a little bit, but I didn't let it because the movie
Look, and
doesn't
once
take
again,
itself that
I don't
seriously.
care about this.
Yes, we don't care about this, but we're talking about the movie, so we might as well talk about it. Not the end, right before the conclusion, when he's officially framed on the news,
Mhm.
you see the footage of Aaron Taylor Johnson karate kicking the other guy, Henry, I think his name was, to
Mhm.
death. And they got his face on Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Yes.
But 10 minutes before that, the video and the phone they needed was destroyed by the shotgun. So how did they get the
So
video to
Waddingham already
manipulate?
had that video. So that's what I'm saying, is that she already had access to that video. So why did we need to go through the trouble of getting the phone? You should have just sent him to that hotel to see the dead body, and that's really all you needed.
Yeah, you're right. It's they almost did one too many things, and it didn't make a lot of sense. But
And
again,
also the
who
fact
cares?
that he explains everything to him, and you're like, okay, let's move on from this.
Yeah.
We get it. We
Yeah,
know
we
what's
get it.
happening. And then even in that third act, which by the way, my big pants tent was when he drove the boat backwards because he teased it at the beginning. I'm like, yes,
That
fuck
was
yeah,
pretty good.
I love this.
Yeah.
But when he eventually goes to Emma Blunt, right? Emily Blunt?
Emily, you can call her
Yeah.
Emma if you'd like.
I don't know her well enough.
Mhm.
When he eventually goes to her and he's wearing that costume, which by the way, the whole making a sci-fi movie was a pretty funny, like underlying
It was, yeah.
thing between the whole movie. But first off, she knows martial arts way too well. I felt like everyone in the movie knew how to fight way too well. But when they then concoct their plan, I'm like, you should have done this off camera. And then when you guys do the plan and we see the plan, we'll be like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like they told us what was going to happen.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. It would have been a funner experience for the audience, is what you're saying, basically.
Also, they should have shown us at least once them having sex.
I would have been okay with that. Yeah, I definitely would have been okay with that. It's also weird to me.
Not to be crass.
Yeah.
But yeah, we should have saw that.
It's a little weird to me, and I couldn't help but think about it while watching the movie, as both of their significant others are also so famous
Mhm.
that I couldn't help but thinking what they're thinking, like when their spouses film movies like this, you know?
Oh, who was the recent actor or actress that was in something? And it's no, every other movie. No, when everyone kept posting the scene from Challengers of Zendaya getting kissed on the neck by both of those gentlemen, and they're like, Tom Holland's at home crying. And he might have been, who knows?
I saw a
Oh,
TikTok.
don't do that, Zendaya. Please, no.
I saw a TikTok about basically what would you do And that if you were in the situation of those 2 dudes and challengers, and there's a lot of natural responses or one you could come up with, and the TikTok was, I would have respect for Tom Holland. I like Tom Holland that enough that I would not do it.
That's pretty good.
Q, I don't really have a ton of spoilers for this
No,
movie. It's pretty straightforward.
it's fun. I like it.
It's a lot of fun. I think good point you made too is a good date movie. Men, women,
Yes.
children of a certain age will enjoy this
It's
as well.
PG-13. It's
Yeah, so
PG-13.
it's a good time. Great popcorn movie.
Like I would say that I would recommend this to more people than Dune 2. Because I think I need to know the person more for Dune 2 and be like, you're okay with sci-fi, right?
I think Dune 2 is good enough, so good that it sort of
I agree that's
transcends that.
great. But then, so with Dune 2, you also need to be like, now don't get mad at me, but you need to watch another 2.5 hour movie ahead of it.
Or at least watch a 30-minute YouTube breakdown.
I have a link to Screen Crush. I have a link to Heavy Spoilers. I have a link to New Rockstar.
Yeah,
Which
those are
one do
the
you
3.
want?
Those are the 3.
Yeah.
Pick your poison.
So thumbs up, go and watch that movie.
Yes, sir.
Let's get into Maxac. And Maxac could be anything. It could be a boat. Also, Lee Majors shows up.
Yeah, in the post-credit or mid-credit, Lee
Yeah,
Majors shows up to make the arrest of
he
Hannah
looks great.
Waddingham and Aaron Taylor Johnson.
And Maxac could be anything. It could be a boat. Mac. Our X Minute, because of course we just got episode 8 of X-Men, the animated series, X-Men 97, that just came out. And at the end of so we've gotten 8 so far.
2 episodes.
Let's say 5 of the episodes. At the
Mhm.
end of 5 of the episodes, I'm sitting on my couch just staring at my blank TV being like, that's exactly what I wanted.
I would say so far there have been 2 episodes of the 8 that I didn't care for. Not that they
Mhm.
weren't good, didn't really care for them. The other 6 I have very much enjoyed. 2 or maybe even 3 of the 8 have been unbelievable. Really,
Yes.
really
So
great.
let me say this. We're not doing a full episode breakdown. There are going to be some minor spoilers here for episode 8. So if you haven't seen it yet, see you later.
Yeah.
Just get out of here.
Adios.
But for the 8 episodes that we have right now, I love the fact that they truly planned out a 10 episode season with every character having an arc, and they know the audience. They're not trying to, make this for children. They said, our audience is dudes 28 to 42, and that's what we're making this for.
I've got to admit here, this has been
Not dudes, it's people.
this has
But
been
anyone can be a
anyone
dude.
can be a
I'm a
dude.
dude,
Yeah,
you're a dude,
a
we're
dude.
all dudes. I just quoted Kel Mitchell. Just let that be.
This has already surpassed my expectations for the
Yes.
show. And to your point, the overall story that they've been telling this season is much better than any of the stories they've tried to tell in one seasons of the past seasons of this show. It's just more streamlined. The other one gets a little all over the
Mhm.
place. I am stunned how much I like Magneto and where Magneto's character is going.
Yes.
In
Yes.
this latest episode, they somehow properly use the Holocaust to frame what has gone on to him and the mutants in this season so far, and to properly motivate what he does next. And I just thought that was perfect, picturesque. It's a absolute tragedy, a beautiful tragedy, whatever that term is for him. He basically has to sacrifice his the rest of his life because he's never going to be liked ever again for what he has to do in this show. And it's great. The show is great. The motivations are great. There are a couple things I haven't liked. Like I didn't care for the Magneto and Rogue stuff, but what that led to has been phenomenal. So I sort of forgive it.
Yeah, all the stuff that I was like, yeah, the Storm storyline took a little while to really get going. The Magneto and Rogue just kind of humanizes Magneto more.
Mhm.
I've liked where we are right now. We've needed every episode to get here, and if they land this plane, I'm telling you right now, 40 hot dogs.
Yeah, I think it's trending that way, and I guess this is spoiler full, so we can talk about it. Um, when Magneto basically turns the Earth into one massive EMP to kill all those sentinels, humanoid sentinels. Um, what I think a lot of people are missing initially, and maybe have discovered now by reading stuff online or watching videos, is that's just not taking out the humanoid sentinels. Nuclear power, hospitals, airplanes that are in the sky. A lot of humans have now died because of that, but Magneto had to do it to save the mutants. So that's what Wolverine is referring to at the end of the episode when he says he declared war. Magneto declared wars because now all that goodwill the X-Men had built up, kind of with the civilians during the season, a little before
Yeah.
that, is now completely gone, and for Magneto, gone forever. So it actually was an incredible episode when you consider all those things, and we get a couple pretty good cameos too. Goo.
Yeah, and back to Magneto real quick. In a very short amount of time, just from season 5 of the original run, he lost his sanctuary. He then said, "Okay, I'll try this new thing. I'll try and lead the X-Men." That didn't work either, and now he is just at his last wit.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about with them framing the Holocaust appropriately. Obviously, he was what 8 or 10 or whatever when the Holocaust happened in this timeline. Um, he can't lose everything again, and
Yes.
that's what he's realizing, and
Well,
that's he comes to this decision to have to do that. Millions of people probably just died, but he had to do it to save his people. And
even
you can
his
disagree
final
with what he's doing, but if you're a mutant, I mean, I believe the episode, or I forget, or someone says in the episode,
the
Magneto,
overall tag
right,
of Magneto is right.
right, yeah, and
Yes.
as a mutant, that's basically probably where what their stance is.
But I mean, even thinking back to his final line on Genosha, speaking to the child there in German, that was great too.
Yeah, you're right. That was great.
So back to your cameos. Well, Charles is back. He came back at the end of the episode. We get Spider-Man
Yeah, nice little tidbit of him
and Omega
web
Red too.
slinging. Yeah, Omega Red was unexpected. I guess all these were unexpected because there's a quick montage of the fallout of what Magneto has just done, and we
Mhm.
still don't know the full gist of it. But you get Spider-Man, Omega Red, and then Goo in as you aptly named it, a FaceTime of all the villains in the
It's a big
episode.
villain Skype call.
Yeah, Skype call. We get Doctor Doom, who's working with Bastion, and Baron Zemo working with Bastion.
And then also, Doom does not want this this big mass death because that is something that he dealt with as a child as well.
Yeah,
We got Zemo, and we also got Killmonger.
was Killmonger in there?
Yeah, he was on one of the screens.
Oh, wow. So this is going to be pretty interesting because the episode also lays the ground for Sinister to flip on Bastion, not
Mhm.
to go with the X-Men, but he has plans to supersede or live longer than Bastion. So I wonder if in these last two episodes you have Magneto and his mutants, Xavier and his mutants, and then Sinister sort of all fighting against Bastion in one way or another.
Do you think the Goblin Queen comes back?
So they tell us that she's dead in this
Yes.
episode, which we sort of thought she was, but again, because she is such a great psychic, she probably is still alive out there somewhere. I don't know. I don't know if she comes back in these last two episodes. She's probably not done for the series, though.
I also love how they got into like absolute points in time. Like
Mm.
they couldn't change Genosha.
These
That is
like
just what it is.
Omega level event, or not Omega. Omega's a description for a mutant. The what level events? I forget what the word is that just absolutely happened. This is what they deal with in Spider Verse too, like
Yes.
events that you just can't avoid.
And they pretty much brought up the ancient one. Like
Mm.
it's such good stuff. There's so much good stuff in this show. It's the best.
Which also makes me think about. Um, I don't know if it seems like Cable has gone back to try to save Madeline a bunch, so
Mhm.
she definitely could be dead for the long haul.
Which then, and I believe Screen Crush brought this up, it reminds you of the episode of What If when Stephen Strange keeps on
Yeah,
trying to save Christine over and over again.
right, exactly.
But it happens, which I love because I think that Gambit needs to stay dead.
I don't think Gambit needs to stay dead of all the people, but I'm not. I won't be upset if he is.
Someone needs to stay dead. We need steaks.
That I agree.
Delicious sizzling steaks. All right, Mac, where can the people find us?
You can find us on Twitter and on Instagram at Mac and Goo Podcast. Every other platform we are Mac ampersand Goo. It's Mac Shift 7 Goo. That includes Facebook, Stitcher, TuneIn, Castbox, Spreaker, Google Play, iHeartRadio. We are on Spotify. More importantly, we're on Apple Podcasts. Get on there, rate, review, subscribe, 5 stars. If you do that, we'll get you a free Mac and Goo t-shirt from the folks over at Watertown Sportswear. Watertown Sportswear is on 34 Mount Auburn Street in Watertown. WatertownSportswear.com, expert screen printing and embroidery.
tpublic.com.
Merch.
So we have a pretty exciting episode coming up on Goose Day, one that I am very intrigued to get into. Now, have you guys ever heard of the movie Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace?
Yeah, a little peek behind the curtain between now and our next episode. May the 4th is happening, and this coincides with the 25th anniversary of The Phantom Menace. So Goo and I will be discussing the American cinema classic, Star Wars The Phantom Menace.
And I don't even care about the movie. I'm thinking more about everything that surrounded that, the marketing blitz that will never be touched again.
Fair enough. I always find Phantom Menace a fascinating think piece and discussion piece because we were old enough to crave it and want it, but young enough to not recognize some of the really shitty stuff in the movie because we were 10 years old for it. Whereas Davey talks about, I think Davey was 16 when he saw it.
Mm-hmm.
And that 6 years is a substantial difference in terms of understanding what's going on in that movie and understanding that a lot of it was pretty bad. So
it is the most anticipated movie of all time.
Yeah, you very well might be right. So I'm actually looking forward to rewatching, and it's actually in some cinemas this weekend too. For May the 4th,
it's being re-released. Yes.
Yeah. So if you're
gonna go, are you gonna go? And
I
watch
might. I honestly might because I was planning on going to the cinema anyways for Challengers. I might do a little double feature here.
If you do that, can you please document your time there?
How do you want me to document the time?
Take pictures of you smiling and watching, I guess.
And for the first time, now that movies are on the upswing again here, now that
we are in the movie renaissance,
and now that my schedule is cleared out a little bit, we finally have a full month planned out for the first time in all year.
I'm pretty excited about that too.
Yeah.
All right, so Tuesdays are Goose Days. I abuse kangaroos.
Bye.
Please flip the cassette over to side B to continue the adventure.
Tim Burton.